course I misplaced it all. Of course I put it all in the wrong places. Of course I did that. I'm like, I'm being real smart. I'm getting everything ready before I start today. And then I move. All right, so that's hopefully we got this worked out today. So I wrote this stuff down today so I'm not switching between screens, and I cut off some of the menus, the tabs on my browsers so that they're not interfering potentially. Broadcast tonight. So maybe we'll do better tonight. Maybe it'll be better and it won't be any of those things. I don't know. So we're going to just see how we do. I will keep an eye out. Do let me know if you have any lag or drag issues. And I will see if I can, because I went last night when we did the catch-ups. It was an hour and 47 minutes for me, and the video was only an hour and 17 minutes total. So we lost about a half an hour of content in there, and I don't want to repeat that. So if it looks like it's going to do some data lag, I'm going to stop and wait for it to catch up. I don't know why it does that, but it'll do what it'll do, I guess. So what we're going to be working on tonight are some mustards. Now this is going to be a lot simpler than last night. I don't know that I will say it'll be faster, because I figured last night was going to be, I figured last night was going to be about 45 minutes because it was 20 minutes of cook time for the marinara. But tonight, I mean, that ended up being like an hour and 47 minutes. So tonight, I'm not going to make any guesses yet because I don't know. But one of the things the camera keeps trying to refocus as I move at different ranges. So I may have to see if I can change the settings on the camera so it doesn't do that as much. I had some trouble tracking down some mustard. Let's see. I will be working on a Chinese mustard, a Dijon mustard, which I won't be able to finish tonight because the Dijon mustard needs to be sat out on a counter for about 48 hours to soak in the solution before it's ground. So I will do an update on that on Friday or Saturday, but I will start it tonight to just show what the process is. Yeah, I can get the it's not even necessarily focus, I don't think. It focuses if I move too far in and too far out from the camera, but I think what we're getting is my overhead lighting, and I may have to change that. My overhead lighting it's above me and behind me slightly. So if I move back, it changes the color and it freaks the camera out. So I think it's just a shift between light and dark, and it's trying to adjust those factors. So I may tinker with some of the settings on it, but let's get into some cooking, shall we? It took me, I did a lot of searching yesterday, and I don't know I don't know why it did that, but I did a lot of searching for mustards the other day, and I went to 3 different stores and barely found any that was useful, and it was super expensive, and I got super frustrated. And then I remembered one of the local stores around here carries a lot of discount stuff, and sure enough, I found plenty of mustard in there today. And they have it in formats, because one of the things I was looking for was mustard seed for the Dijon. And mustard seed, the only one I could find yesterday at traditional grocery stores was this. This was $5 for this container. And this is a small container. If you're going to be making any quantity of Dijon mustard, that's going to get you a small serving of Dijon mustard. Whereas this, today, I believe cost me $1. And this is easily 4 to 5 times as much. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy that it's so hard to find the ingredients of things I'm needing these days. And I guess it's partly because people just don't make things anymore. People just don't make things from scratch like they used to. So I'm going to do measuring spoons. There we go. From last night. Should be good. So the first thing I'm probably going to set up here is going to be the what would be normally called like a French's mustard, like the one we're used to, yellow hot dog mustard that everybody knows. And the way this recipe goes together is all my other recipes are like 8 tablespoons of 8 tablespoons is the rough estimate. It's usually half a cup of mustard. 8 tablespoons is half a cup. So I broke it all down into tablespoon measurements, because when you look at something like the Dijon mustard, you have half a cup of wine, half a cup of vinegar, half a cup of mustard seed, and you let that soak over 48 hours. With the honey mustard, it's half a cup of mustard and 4 tablespoons of honey, 4 tablespoons of rice vinegar. So in that case, 4 tablespoons of honey and vinegar equal 8 tablespoons, which is the same amount of mustard. So it's 1 part honey, 1 part vinegar, and 2 parts mustard. Whereas the Dijon is 1 part wine, 1 part vinegar, 1 part mustard. And then later you add some icing sugar or honey to cut the bite of it a little bit. The French's mustard, the recipe I have makes a larger quantity than usual. So the recipe I work with is usually 12 tablespoons, but I can cut it in half. It just means some of my other measurements where 1 cup of water would be half a cup of water. A half teaspoon would be a 1/4 teaspoon. 1.5 tablespoons of vinegar would be 3/4 tablespoon of vinegar, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt would be 3/4 teaspoons. So I could cut that recipe in half. And so instead of 12 tablespoons of mustard for this one, I would be using 6. But the Chinese mustard, I don't have a lot I need to use tonight. So I may just make, because I'm doing everything in sets of 8 tablespoons, 6 tablespoons, so half the French's mustard, the hot dog mustard, and put the remaining 2 tablespoons of mustard into the Chinese mustard. Because here's the funny thing. Here's the really funny thing. Chinese mustard, I'll just do this right now. Okay, so let's see if I can get this. Nope, I'm going to have to do the neck on this bottle's not big enough for the tablespoon. So we're going to do 6 tablespoons of, oh, for pity's sake. You're going to cake up on there. All right. Nope, we're not even cutting into that. Okay. This is a finely ground mustard. It doesn't want to. I will do. You know what? I'm just going to dump it all out into this dish. And I will scoop out what I need, because I'm not playing this game all night. Okay, so. Okay, so we're going to do. That's 1. 2. I might not have enough for the whole night. We'll find out. 3. 4, 5. I need to 6 for the French's mustard halving recipe. Shouldn't keep calling it French's because that doesn't get me in trouble. It's not French's. It's hot dog mustard. 6. So what we're going to do here is, that's more or less what we need for the Chinese mustard. So the Chinese mustard, if you're going into it like this, is literally, this is hilarious. All right. So here's some water. Here's the mustard powder. Ta-da! Yeah, I'm a little bit snarky about that one, but more or less what you have when you have that spicy mustard that you get at a Chinese food restaurant, it's just mustard powder and water. Now, if you want to take something like this and make it even more unique and potent, what you end up doing is you can put in some horseradish and you get something that's very similar to that green wasabi paste that you get with like sushi and other foods like that. Wasabi is a root that's similar to horseradish, but it's an Asian horseradish. It has a sweeter tone, but what we get as wasabi isn't actually wasabi. It's this plus horseradish dyed green, occasionally with some actual wasabi in it for a little bit of a tonal change in the flavor. But this is Chinese mustard. It's just mustard powdered in water. Whew. Okay, there's a little bit of a spicy bite to it. And you can add more water to dilute it as you need it. This is pretty thick. Oh, wow, that's got bite to it. And that is really all there is to that. So what we're doing down here is, so we got 6 tablespoons of mustard, and we need half a cup of water. Right? No. Yeah, half a cup of water. So you can see with the hot dog mustard, you really start very similar to what you do for a Chinese mustard. So it doesn't really, you don't have to do a lot of departure from that particular pattern of behavior. All these mustards seem to be very similar, although this is going to be much more fluid to start with. Now, you'll notice with these mustards like this that the color is a very kind of a muted beige yellow. It's not like that bright color yellow that we're used to seeing in those hot dog mustards. And part of that is achieved with one other ingredient. And I have used this same ingredient for getting a yellow color in, I guess you'd call it a vegetable-based dyeing process for many ingredients. But I've used it on cloth. I've used it on wood as a stain to get a yellow color. And I've used it in, what do we got? Just locked up. Had to restart YouTube. You see, mine's not telling me there's anything wrong yet. Last night, I did think I saw a notice telling me I was having a lag or a upload issue. So I will keep an eye out. I will try to watch my screen for any reports of irregularities. So again, hopefully we're still uploading. I do think some of this is definitely on my end, where I don't know that my internet connection can upload the data well enough. But going back to this mustard, you'll notice that it's just a watery version of the Chinese mustard. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab turmeric. And this I've used previously, like I said, for dyeing other things. So you only need a very little bit of this. So turmeric on here is like a 1/4 teaspoon. So, or yeah, 1/4 teaspoon is enough on the turmeric to be able to get you a color shift towards a brighter yellow, usually. Mine's looking especially brown right now. I think it's just because it's so concentrated. But it does add a little bit of a flavor change to it too. So it's one of those things where a lot of companies, when they produce a flavoring agent of some kind, or a coloring agent into the food, and talk about how, like, oh, it's just for coloring. Like, yeah, but it changes the flavor too. Now you can simmer this over some heat if you wanted to cook it in, but you can already see it's getting more of that traditionally bright yellow color to it. And that's all down to the turmeric. Like the mustard has that beige yellow. This has a brighter, colorful yellow to it. So, okay, so we've got the mustard. Now, the ones that I've played with recommend using a bit of garlic powder in here. So we're looking for 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. So I'm going to do that because I don't think I've ever used that in a mustard that I can remember. And I'm wondering if it affects it in any way that's noticeable. Because like, well, a lot of these homemade ones, they don't taste quite the same as a commercially available one might. So that's, put a little more garlic in there than it needed. But we'll find out. See how that affects it. So we're looking at a 1/4 teaspoon on that, or no, 1/2 teaspoon on that. I went a little under that. So we got that in there. We've got the turmeric, mustard, water. You can do a bit of salt in there. But it already looks more like, I don't know if you can notice the color difference on that versus this, but it already looks way more yellow. And so we do just a pinch of salt. A couple pinches of salt then. It says we're looking for about a 3/4 of a tablespoon of salt. I don't like mine particularly salty. That's not the point. And what we're adding next is, now should I go for a white wine vinegar or do I go with the cider vinegar? What do you think? I sort of feel like for the more traditional flavor, what we want is a unflavored vinegar. So it's not going to be apple flavoring in the mustard, so that it doesn't create a different flavor profile. White wine vinegar is going to be vinegar mostly, and it's going to be a slightly sweeter taste with maybe a little muskiness to it, depending on the quality of my cooking wine. So we're looking for 3/4 tablespoon of vinegar. That seems about right. And you'll notice I rough estimate some of these, so that they're not always going to be perfect. And that's fine. Most of these you won't notice the difference. Oop. Did I use the right? Oh, it got much thinner. Much thinner. There we go. How does that taste? I don't think that's quite where we want it. But still got a little bit of that heat to it. Alrighty, and that's really what this mustard is. And then what we've got now is honey mustard and Dijon mustard to make. Oh, wow, a little bit of heat to that. All right. Pull that off to the side. Honey mustard. Do I have another one of these bowls? Yeah. So the honey mustard on this is going to be So we're going to look for 8 tablespoons. We're going to go through a lot of mustard tonight. All right, so yep. I don't understand why that's doing that. Stop, camera, stop. So that's 1. 2. 3. The scintillating part of it, counting out the tablespoons. Great content. Okay, what do you got here? I'm making my grandmother's lasagna recipe. Unfortunately, she died from... Oh, yeah, all right. Thanks for the input on that one. It's always a productive input from certain people, isn't it? What number was I on? So we'll go 5. Six. Seven. I think I got that about right. 8. That looks about right to me. That's roughly 8 tablespoons of mustard powder. Please stop freaking out, camera. And then what we're looking for is, got the so this is the wine vinegar. Really? Can we get this off? Nope. Come on. There we go. Who? Such a tiny opening on a bottle. All right, so we're looking for 4 tablespoons of vinegar. That's 1. 2. 3. 4. So that's the vinegar for that one. Yeah, put a little bit of this over here. Okay, so that's the vinegar and the, where did all the other parts go? I think I'm missing something. All right, so that's the lid for the vinegar. We're good on that. Now it's just, need another spoon or a fork or a utensil of any kind, really. So mixing the vinegar in with the mustard. No turmeric this time, so it's not going to have the bright yellow color. But now usually with a honey mustard, you're looking for like a stone ground mustard, but it's hard enough to find just what you need. So what we do next is, this is the mustard powder. And so usually it might be like a darker mustard color, like a browner color. And then honey, we do, so we're looking for 4 tablespoons of honey. And there are different types of honey you can do for this too. I've seen some like orange blossom honeys and blueberry blossom honeys, clover honey. This, I believe, is just clover honey. Yeah. Some of the honeys are like a darker color, and that can lend a different look to your finished honey, or a different look to your finished honey mustard. Let's see how that looks in the mixture first before we add too much more. You might not want to go all the way with 4 tablespoons with that. So it's already darkening the color of the mustard a little bit, and it's smoothing out the consistency a little. I think a little bit more honey won't hurt it. Now, if I had a little bit of like a brown mustard instead of a yellow mustard for some of this, it would maybe have like a nice, rich, almost molassesy color. You might be able to throw in a little molasses to add that color tone change, but and you're always welcome to adjust the measurements to get a different change in the texture or taste of the finished product here. So if you wanted a thicker mustard, you could add more mustard powder to this recipe. If you wanted to make it a little less sweet and a little more sharp, you could do more of the vinegar versus the honey. And that's a honey mustard right there. So a good honey mustard is pretty straightforward. And I mean, all of this comes from like a very simple start of, for the most part, the mustard powder with water is Chinese mustard. The mustard powder with vinegar and honey is honey mustard. Or mustard powder with water, vinegar, a little bit of garlic, and vinegar is your, and the turmeric is your hot dog mustard. And then your Dijon mustard, which is what we're going to do next, is going to be pretty much cracking open the mustard seed. And we're going to do 8 tablespoons of mustard seed. So it's probably going to be most of this, I think, at this point. 8 tablespoons is... So we do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it is predominantly a large portion of the bottle of mustard here. All right, so that's our last mustard. I don't have to worry too much about going too far into detail with that. All right, so what we do for a Dijon mustard is we need the white wine and the wine vinegar, and we need I might have put that in the wrong container, but we'll give that a go. So we'll do the 4 tablespoons of, no, 8 tablespoons of vinegar, 8 tablespoons of wine. So I will get a bigger container. Just because I'm pretty sure what we're going to end up with here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's you're really not doing like with the other mustard. You get a lot of with the other mustard you do a lot of powder to liquid ratio. With this, you're doing a lot of liquid to the powder or the seeds that you're using. And what you're going to do is you're going to let this stew. I wouldn't say stew. I shouldn't say stew. It's you're going to let this soak at room temperature for 2 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So that's, is it doing it with the audio sounds? I mean, it's not connected to the counter, so it's not doing by impact or shock or anything. And then you just mix in your mustard seed. You let it sit on the counter, preferably covered so nothing falls into it. Over the next 2 days, and then you run it through a blender when that's all done to make a smooth consistency for them. Well, a semi-smooth consistency. A Dijon mustard has a little more grit to it, but that is essentially our 4 mustards. And so that was much easier than last night. All right, so a little static might be partly due to background kitchen noises. So I did this. This is my hot dog mustard. So we did, that's the vinegar in there. We added a little wine to this one. We did half as much vinegar, and we did a little white wine and a little bit of vinegar to this. I do need to up the amount of mustard powder to this, and I think I need to do a little bit of a dash of, stop freaking out, camera. So we did, that's ground mustard. Ground mustard. So what we need on this was, what do we do? French mustard was 6, so I may just use the rest of this to top this up and make my fancy wine mustard. But all right, so we did, where's our garlic powder? Did I set it aside somewhere? I swear, I know I'm not the worst at being organized in the kitchen sometimes, but it feels like I am sometimes. Let's just clean up a little bit here. So that's the turmeric. Okay, so we've got the onion powder, garlic powder. There you go. I'm sort of doubling this recipe because it's originally calls for 12 tablespoons of mustard powder, and I can do that now. I just wanted to make sure I had enough to do everything else. So what we're going to do is so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that roughly works out. And I think I've said a couple times here this evening that, believe it or not, for most of this stuff, accuracy and quantities is rough. It doesn't have to be perfect. And so a little bit of water, thin it up a little bit. Clean up my utensils a little bit while I'm doing it. And I might toss in a little more turmeric to that because I think the ratios are a little off, but not too bad. It's turning a slightly more gray tone. So this is going to be very similar to a Dijon now that I tossed the mustard or the white wine into it. But it's not going to have the same benefit of soaking that this one did. So in a couple of days, when this one runs through the blender, that's going to get you a very like a coarse mustard, where this is a very smooth mustard. And I'm going to do some taste tests of this in a second here. I have to say I like the fact that we're only 40 minutes into this and we're pretty much approaching done, whereas last night was double this time plus some. And I probably could have gone a little bit longer, but I called it because we were having so many technical difficulties. All right, so I think I might toss in a little more vinegar. Thin it up a little bit. I could give it a little more turmeric to get that bright yellow color back if I want to. Although, to be fair, that's a pretty presentable. All right, so let's give that a taste. Ooh, that's still kind of spicy. I think I might have overkilled on the spice there. Let me check my recipe here. 12 tablespoons of mustard. I did half a cup of water, so it could use a little more water. Wow, that's got a lot of bite to it. Needs way more vinegar. Phew. It's a little more like the right consistency. Now, a lot of commercial condiments like these use a corn syrup additive to everything, I swear. So let's try this. That's a little bit better. Whew. Yeah, that bite to it. It's that spicy mustard seed. And that's still a fairly good color for that. That's still pretty bright. So let's do a taste test. So I have the pitas from the pizzas yesterday. The pizza pitas. Pull one of these guys out. Split it in half. Half again. And then I got a little bit of ham. Yeah, same to you. It's not a help. All right, so grab a little bit of ham. Be a little bit easier if the container opened itself. And like that's the thing about like the mustards. I think like we could all be making better mustards to our own tastes on a regular basis, and I don't know why we all go for the same commercial stuff when we could be doing this. Except for it's super hard to find the mustard powders. All right, so let's do a slice of ham. Inside my little bit of pita pocket here with a touch of mustard. It's very reminiscent of a spicy brown mustard. I think if you wanted to get a closer to a hot dog mustard, you'd put a lot more vinegar into it. Let me play with it a little. Let me give it a try. All right, so kind of in the frame there. Let's do a little more vinegar. Cut some of that spice, add a little bit of sweet from the apple cider. Yeah, that's a more familiar consistency. Let's see if that tastes about right. It's pretty good. I don't know if it's the brand of mustard I got or what, but it's very spicy. I'd say that's pretty close. It's still very much like a spicy brown mustard. Alrighty. And I'm going to do a little bit of that honey mustard because that looks and tasted amazing. So let's split that in half. Chinese mustard is spicy mustard. It's usually best on something like a egg roll or a crab rangoon. A little bit of honey mustard. Come on, don't close on me. Get that ham in there. And now that's tasty. That's a little bit more my speed. That's a good mustard. I would make that a lot more often. I don't use this kind of mustard very often. I use that pretty much only on Asian food. Although if I mix that with a little bit of horseradish, I might use it in seafood. I found poached fish with wasabi is nice. Alrighty, well, that's pretty much everything I got to do right now. So I think I'm ready to call it for the night and be back tomorrow. We are approaching an hour. So well, tomorrow we do mayo. So we'll see a couple other ways to do it. Other condiments. All right. Have a good one.